Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, today's the day we're going to get this hood on that 1950 Chevy truck, the 3100. But we had a lot of other stuff to cover before we get to that point, and I really like to get all the work done on the hood that I can before I try to hang it. I don't want to be putting stuff on after I've already hung it on the truck. It's just that much more chance of you dropping something onto a fender or doing something that if you're working out over here where you got plenty of room, it's way better to do in advance. So let's jump in here. We're going to cover a few things that I had to do that I wasn't expecting to do, and then we'll kind of go step by step what I've been doing off camera, and then we'll get some help over here, get this hood on, and then get the hood adjusted, and then get the fenders adjusted to match the hood. So let's jump over here. We'll take a look what I've done already, and one or two more things we need to do before we can start hanging the hood. Okay, so I was getting the boxes out of the truck that Darren sent along with it with all the parts and hardware and everything I'm going to need to get the hood on and get everything adjusted. And I noticed he had the hinges and the props powder coated, which is great. They look fantastic. The problem is that the powder coater, for one thing, they powder coated in this position right here, so there was nothing underneath there. It looks like it glued it and ripped it away. It would have been nice if they would have turned it a little bit, but they don't always know. So, and the second thing was that, you know, when they're powder coating, they're spraying that powder. Well, it got down in here, basically it glued or welded the arm to the pivot point here, the rivet right there. And so somebody had moved it, or it was already loose, and so instead of sliding on the rivet like it's supposed to, the rivet was actually turning in the backing plate here, and it was welded to that. So that wasn't the way it was designed to have a good wear surface, and that rivet would have eventually worn and snapped out. So I spent about a half hour with a razor knife cutting down inside that groove, finally got it to break loose, and got it going pretty good, and I tried to pin that rivet a little bit better on the back side. I wanted to put a little tack on it with the welder, but I was afraid I was going to overheat and ruin the powder coating. But it feels pretty snug. It's not ideal, but and then I got some oil up in there. So it's moving freely. So, and I had to do that on 3 other joints. Same similar idea, but they came out a little bit easier than this one. Darren also sent a lot of stainless steel hardware. He's used a lot of stainless on this truck to put it back together, which is fantastic. But he also sent along some anti-seize. I had some, but he had sent it along with the truck. So you always want to make sure you use anti-seize or grease or at least oil on stainless steel hardware, especially when it's a stainless bolt into a stainless nut. It will gall on you, and since we're going to have to loosen and tighten these so many times, there's a good chance that it could get hot and gall inside there or cause a burr. So there's anti-seize on all the hardware, and the hinges on both sides are set. We're not going to install the props until the hood is on. I want it to be moved freely so I can get all the adjustments done easily. So let's move over. We got a little bit more work to do on the props, get the spring preloaded, and then a couple other small things, and we're just about ready to hang this hood. Okay, here are the hood props, the spring-loaded props that hold the hood open. What I did on these was I had to knock some errant or drips of powder coating off so I could get the springs on. And then I also took a step bit. I found a step bit that had the exact same size hole for the props and for the hinges at the pivot points, and just ran that through to clean all the powder coating out of the hole, because none of the bolts would actually slide through. And you don't want to figure that out while you're holding the hood trying to get a bolt in. So you want to make sure you clean out, if you have things painted or powder coated, make sure you get those holes nice and clean and smooth so when the bolts go in, it's super easy. You don't want to be stressing while you're trying to hang on to that hood. The next thing I had to do was preload the springs, get the spring on. So this one is installed right now, and that's ready to go. This one is getting ready to be installed. So as you can see right here, we're going to have to pull this all the way around. And as far as I could tell, this is all correct. Darren and I went back and forth. He doesn't remember, but he took a lot of pictures, and he sent me a picture of it unsprung right after he pulled it off. So I figured it out from there, basically by how the position right here compared to here is that how I figured it out. So these springs have been cleaned up with a wire wheel, and they're bare. So what I did was I took some Gibbs brand penetrant, and I wiped them down really good, and I poked the paper towel down through there, and I just corkscrewed it all the way in and back out and make sure they're good and coated with the Gibbs brand to make sure that they don't rust. So springs, when they rust, they become weak and they break. So always try to take care of your bare springs. So the last thing to do is to pull this all the way back over here, and it's a little bit of a bear, so I'm not going to do it. The truck's only 2 feet away. Just in case I slip, I don't want to do it that close to the truck. So we'll swing over away from the truck, and I'll show you how I went ahead and pulled that spring over and got it on the pin right here. Okay, so to preload this spring, this is the way I'm doing it. I'm out away from the truck just in case something flies loose. So you just want to grab it with the pliers like that and just pull around and just hook it over there, smack it on just like that. So that's the safest way I could find to do it. Okay, so I got my fender guards on both fenders and the one for the grill up on the hood there, and I got everything taped down, so just in case we need to set a wrench down or we slip or a belt buckle or something. And then one of the last things I need to do is trim the gasket right here, the anti-squeak. Darren left it sticking out here. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's poked out there, so when the hood closes, it's going to push it out, which is not going to be good. So I'll just take that loose and cut it off and fix it. And then I got all the grommets on the hood, so I can show you real quick how to get those in without scratching anything. So let me grab a pair of pliers and we'll go over that real quick. Okay, so the grommets, the bumpers that go along the edge of the hood right here, the little flat ones. You see that right there? And they've got the little mushroom shape on the other side, kind of one way. And the easiest way to do this is don't try to take a screwdriver and push this side, because the chances are you're going to slip and you're going to hit the paint. The easiest way is to put a little lube on it, spit on it, oil, whatever you want to do, and then just grab it with pliers and grab it by the tit right there after you pushed it through and just pull. And what it'll do is it'll stretch that out and it'll pull it right past into the hole. So let's do one real quick. Just keep working at it. You'll know it when it's in, just like that. You'll feel it pop in. So now that's sitting nice and flush, and it's ready to go in. And this will rest on the inside of the fender because it's flared the same angle. So that'll keep it from rubbing and give you a perfect line right there. Okay, Dave showed up, so we're just going to hang this thing. Got another friend, a neighbor coming over at LEU, and he's going to help too. So we're just going to set the camera over here and get this thing hung on this truck. We're just going to take it horizontal right over the top. Just be careful of everything. You can wrap your fingers on you. You're not going to hurt anything. All right, let me grab some bolts and get this in. You guys all good? Yeah. Okay, easy. Raise it up a little bit, right there. Yeah, hold on. Let me swing my head in here. Good. All right, coming your way. All right, I think you need to go up a little bit. There you go, and go back up a little bit towards the cab. There you go. Slow down. Raise it lower just a little bit. Is it moving? Yeah. Okay, let me get this towel out of the way. Slide this back. Yeah, go ahead and lower it down slowly. Watch over there for me. Make sure nothing's going to hit.
Yeah. Walk that over here.
Okay. Still good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, hold it. It's touching over here. Go ahead, raise it up. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, lower it down. Needs to go that way a little bit. Right down. Oh, get your fingers stuck. All right, go ahead, lower it down. All right, that was it. Very good. Okay, guys, thanks to Dave and LEU, we got the hood on. No problems, no scratches, no nothing. So that went really well. You saw me how to dive in there. I like to keep the hood flat, not try to have it up like this while attaching the hinges, only because it's easier for whoever's holding the hood for you. It's a lot easier holding it nice and flat, and I'm thin enough I can dive in there and get the bolts started. I put white grease on them, and they got a little slippery, but I got them in, so that's not a big deal. So now the hinges are attached, but the props, the spring-loaded props, are not attached. They're hooked onto the firewall, but they're not attached to the hood at all. And that's because you want the hood to move freely while you're adjusting it. You don't want to be fighting those springs. Those will go on later once we get everything adjusted. So where we're at right now is I've got the hood propped open with this piece of 1x2. And I put a piece of 1x2 on each side, just screwed it on there, kind of like a little yoke, and put an old t-shirt in there, put some tape so it wouldn't move. And so that kind of grabs the hood right here to make sure it won't slide side to side. And then I've got a squeeze clamp down at the bumper to hold it. Because I walk by it so much, it's real easy for me to kick it and kick that thing out and have the hood come slamming down. I'm working by myself, so you got to make your own helpers to help you. The truck's in gear and the wheels are chalked just in case, because if it rolls with that prop in there, the hood's still going to come slamming down. So where we're at right now, hood is on, the hood goes up and down, but it was really getting close to this fender over here. In fact, you had to push it over to get it to go down. So I knew something's out of alignment, and the hood is fairly close. We still have some tweaking to do on it. So just like the shop manual says, I've got all the bolts loose, and it still didn't want to come over. So, and this comes down to something a lot of people don't talk about, cab alignment. Now, if you guys recall, when we put that cab on there, I spent quite a bit of time measuring and getting that cab perfectly straight on the frame. But if it's not perfectly straight on the frame, and you can be off by a 1/16 of an inch, and if you go to the end of this hood, 4.5 feet, a 1/16 off at, back here turns into a 1/4 inch, 4 feet away. So, the cab could be turned a little bit on the chassis, and then you have no adjustment up here to make it work. So what I did was I pulled the radiator support bolts completely out that attach the radiator support to the frame. Okay, then and I put a ratchet strap, as you see here, put a ratchet strap, and I pulled that thing over to one side so I could get the hood to go up and down. Now, if I need to, I will loosen the bolts on the cab, and I will get the cab moved over so this hood goes up and down straight just like I want it, because you align the hood to the body line of the cab right there on the below the windshield, right? And so if the cab is moved a little bit and you align the hood to that, and then you're out here trying to get your fenders to line up, well, it's not going to work because the radiator support is dead center in the frame and your cab is tweaked a little bit to one side or the other. You're never going to get that to work, and you're going to get very frustrated. So keep that in mind. Check your cab alignment. Even if the cab's never come off, that thing could have moved over time, or maybe it wasn't installed properly at the factory. There could have been an accident. Who knows what happens, but that thing could have moved a little bit over all these years, 70 plus years, and now you're trying to line this thing up nice and it's not going your way. So cab alignment and hood alignment go hand in hand on this deal. So the next step for me is I need to get these bumpers along here. You guys saw me put the ones on the edge of the hood. Now we're going to get them on right here on this cowling, and I'll zoom in real close and I'll show you a little quick trick to get those on nice and easy. Okay, so I had to actually get a hold of Darren and ask him where these went, because I know they go up here, but some of the holes they go in look like they used to have screws in them, so I was a little concerned I was going to put them in the wrong spot. So luckily he took a lot of pictures when he was disassembling the truck, and he sent one to me, and it was easy to figure it out. So this bumper is a lot taller than the ones that go on the hood, obviously, and this one has a hole in it. And now we cannot reach from the back side to get this in. So what you want to do, get yourself a drift or a punch or something that's flat on the end that will fit inside that hole, okay? So what you want to do is, you're going to slide that in just like that till it hits the bottom, and it'll actually, let me get that in camera, it'll actually push that nipple, because that hole goes down all the way down to the bottom there, okay? So we're going to spit on the end here a little bit, and all we do is we just take it, and we push and roam it around a little bit, just like that, and it's in. just like that, okay? So that's the way those go in. It's super easy because the tip of this actually goes to the bottom and kind of pushes that out and forces it in the hole, and now we're good to go. Now, you notice I've got some tape over here too because the safety latch is going to be catching right here. It normally catches on the lock plate, the latch plate, but we won't have that in because you don't want that latching. You want this free floating in here while you're doing all your adjustments and everything else. And once you get that set, then this will actually be adjusted to where the hood is. You don't want that striker pushing it one way or the other when you're closing. So, so I got some tape on here to keep from chipping the paint. If we do chip the paint, I'll just touch it up a little bit. So we are just about ready to do some final adjustments on the hood. So let's back away and take a look at that. Okay, we have the hood down. Now I know the shop manual tells you to put a 4-inch block in the front, loosen your hinges, push it down onto the anti-squeak gasket, up front, and then tighten it up, and that's going to get you started on your elevation. Then obviously you want to slide it left to right till your body line up front looks really good. Then you tighten up the bolts on the inside from the inside of the cab. Now I did that. Now, and this comes in where you guys need to realize just because the shop manual says it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So I did that, and the hood would not come down. Now it hit the anti-squeak. Now remember, everything is new on this truck. So that anti-squeak is sticking way up. It's a repop. It may be taller than the factory one was. It could be gripping on the brand new paint. Could be a lot of different things. But basically, the hood came down on it, and instead of sliding and going down, it just hung up there. And this hood would not come down all the way. So instead of using a 4-inch block, I switched over to an 1.5-inch block, okay? It's still a good way of doing it, don't get me wrong. And if a 4-inch block works for you, great. If a 2-inch block works, whatever works is what you should do. Now, so what I did was I got rid of the 4-inch block and I put the 1.5 inch, basically it's this piece of 1x2 right here. I can get my fingers out of there. There we go. So that is what worked for me. Then I loosened the hinges like the shop manual tells you, and I let it set down, and I tried to slide it left to right, and then I tightened them up. And that's where we're at right now. I still need to tweak it a little bit. I feel like that side of the hood needs to come up a little bit, so that's what I'm going to work on right now. I'm going to loosen that up and try to get that up a little bit because it gets really close to the cab, that shape right there, and I don't want that hitting right there. I'd rather have it too high. These trucks weren't built like a modern car. I mean, they were really pretty rough. Even brand new, the body lines and everything really didn't line up that well. So if you didn't rework all the sheet metal on it, you can expect to have these kinds of issues. So what we're going to do, I'm going to jump inside. I'm not going to show you any of it, but I'm going to loosen that side. We're going to get that up a little bit, and then that'll tighten them up again. And then I'm going to slowly inch up on getting the body line across the back as close as I can get it. Then we can start focusing on the front here. But I'll tell you right now, it's looking pretty good. When I lower this down, it's looking pretty good. This, it's sitting pretty well. The fenders do need to, I feel like they need to come up a little bit so the lines line up really nice, but other than that, it's starting to come together. But I still have that ratchet strap down there pushing the radiator support over, which basically takes the whole front of this truck over. Fenders, grill, everything, it's trying to move it over. So once I get the hood where I want and I release the ratchet strap, and if it all slides back, that means I got to move that cab. And I'm not looking forward to it, but I'll do what I have to do. Okay, quick update where we're at. So I want this up a little bit more, so I put a stir stick in there just to hold that up a little bit. The other side's got plenty of gap, but this one was getting really close. The block is still in the front. And then I want an 1/8 to 1/4 inch gap according to the shop manual. I would like an 1/8 inch gap. Now this gap is not going to be perfect, 1/8 inch all the way down. So I picked the closest spot and I put a stir stick in there. That's about 1/8 of an inch. And then all I did was I grabbed the front of the hood and I pulled it this way. So you want to adjust one hinge at a time. Don't have them both loose. So they will flex enough. So they're pretty close to start. I left the driver's side tight. And I loosen this side, and now I'm going to go inside, I'm going to tighten it up, and then we're going to go loosen the other side, and we're going to do a similar thing where I'll have the stir stick in approximately the same location. I'll swing the hood over till that's just snug, just like that. We'll tighten it up. We're going to pull everything out, pull the block out, and raise it up and down and see how it feels. Okay, let's take a look at where we're at. We'll sight right down that line. Having that light blue tape on there really helps tell how good the line's looking. Now the gap right here, once I pulled the block out, I got both sides done. Once I pulled the block out, both sides moved forward about 1/16 of an inch. So it's not the end of the world. That's certainly not 1/4 inch gap right there. It's looking really good. I'm like the way it's sitting. Now it's not wanting to sit down all the way in the front because that anti-squeak gasket right there, the strip, is still kind of binding it a little bit. But the hinges are tight from the inside. The outside bolt is not tight yet, but we're good here. We're really nice here on elevation. Let's walk around and take a look at the other side. Right here in the front, you can see it's not sitting down all the way because the latch is not holding it down. So, but if I push down, it feels like it's up against the bumpers, at least right here and here, maybe not on the edges. So we'll worry about that in a minute. So if we come over here and look at this side, we've got a nice line right here, not perfect. Like I said, these things didn't fit that great from the factory. So if you didn't rework all your sheet metal to make all your body lines perfect, you're not going to get it now. So, and you can see our gap right across there. That looks pretty nice all the way across. So I'm pretty happy. The elevation looks nice. It's sitting down right here, so it's pretty flush. Everything's working out. I had some concern about putting that flutter kit in before the hood was attached because I was afraid, what if it holds it wrong and you know all this other stuff. It looks like I lucked out. If it did become a problem, I could fix it. So what you can do is if you put the flutter kit in like I did and it's causing you problems right now, all you have to do is take a piece of 20-pound test fishing line, slide it through where that brace is, and then put a stir stick on each side and just pull back and forth. It's just like taking off moldings. You pull it back and forth and you just saw right through that stuff and it'll release. And then either you can just leave half of it on the hood, half on the brace, and that'll be your cushion, or you can pump some in there, close the hood, and let it set up again. So, but luckily, everything's working out pretty nice right now. So I'm liking where this is at, so I'm gonna tighten up all the hinges here in the back, and then we're gonna get the props on and close it, and then see how it looks then. Because if you've got a lot of play in your hinges, those spring-loaded props could push your hood up. And that's the whole reason by having that block in the front. And so when you make your adjustments, then when you pull it down, the springs trying to push up will counteract, it'll balance it all out. So we're gonna see if that 2-inch block or 1.5-inch block is gonna work out perfect. I think it will. So let's see what happens. Okay guys, we're pretty close to getting these hinges tightened up for the very last time. I'm feeling really good about it. So something I want to talk to you guys about, make sure your bolts aren't too long. I noticed these were getting, when they're threaded out, they're getting really close to the hinge arms. So I put a couple extra washers in here. Now, I'm kind of anal about water getting inside the car or the cab. It destroys cars from the inside. You get water in there and then it puddles and then it starts rusting everything. So I use a lot of this cord weather stripping. It's non-hardening. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take some and I'm gonna kind of pack it around this washer here, okay? And so what's gonna happen, you know how big that hole is on your cab, right? It's a big oval hole, and water could run down the cowl, you know, from inside, you know, off the windshield, run down, get behind the hinge, and then drip down on your kick panels, right? And obviously this truck was rusted on the inside right there, so that could have been part of the problem. So what I'll do is I just put that little thing right on there. You get that bolt in there, you run it in, and this stuff will smoosh into that hole and then provide a nice little seal. Now it's non-hardening, so it's not going to lock anything together, but it's going to prevent water from getting inside your cab, and that's pretty important to me. Okay, everything's tight. I'm really liking the way it's working. So the props are in, and I'll tell you what, it doesn't take much before they let go, so those springs may be a little bit worn out, but it holds the hood up. It's coming down nice and straight. We don't have the latch in, so I can't latch it down, but it's looking really good. The lines across the back, throughout there, look really good. Up here, obviously we still have some work to do, but the next thing to do is to get the latch in so it holds it down in position so we can start figuring out where these fenders want to be. So let's take care of that right now. Okay, I've got the latch plate in, and what I did was I set it in, and then I just barely got the screws in where they were just touching so I could slide it around still. And then I lowered the hood down till just the safety latch caught, and then I could look through with a flashlight and then kind of slide this around with my finger till that pin was dead center inside this hole right here, the latch hole. And then I just raised the hood up, and then I snugged them up a little bit, just a little bit, so it doesn't move, because I don't know if that's the exact right spot yet. I also got this, the radiator cover tightened down to the grill. So I put all these stainless steel screws in. These are 1/4 20. That's not the proper screw for here. We had them. Darren had supplied bags and bags of different types of hardware. And so the ones that were in here look kind of janky. So what I did was I just put them through, and since I could reach through, I just put a nut on the backside and tightened it all together. It's supposed to be just like a screw where you just tighten it in, but I think that looks a lot better. If he wants to change it out later, he certainly can. So now we can lower the hood down carefully, watching the sides. Now I did take the ratchet strap off the radiator support, and I lined up the holes and I dropped the bolts back in, and everything's just finger tight down there. So it did move a little bit when I had to do that. I had to pry the holes over. So this is a little closer over here on this side, but I can still latch it. So I'm not going to slam the hood. Everything's going to go slow motion. So I'm going to pull the latch out so it's released, and then I'm going to push down slowly until it's right, just like that. So now it's latched. So I didn't slam it. There's nothing bouncing around. You get a chance of chipping a fender or something. So it's in the latch right now, but it's not low enough because that pin needs to be risen up into the hood brace and then locked in place. But for now, I think we've got about 1/8 inch we need to go, so it will actually pull the hood down tight. But it's looking good right now, and it's lined up pretty well. So what I want to do now is I want to move over and mess with that radiator support a little bit and see if I can get the whole thing to slide over. So I'm going to grab the camera real quick, and we'll take a look at what we've got and see if we can manipulate that radiator support to get this whole front end to move over to the passenger side just a little bit. Okay guys, I got the radiator support pushed over as far as it'll go and tightened up. Now I'm not moving the cab. I double checked all my measurements and they look right on the money. So I don't think it's a cab problem. And frankly, this fender over here is looking really good. I mean, I got pretty much everything tightened up over there. The gap is nice, everything's good, and I wouldn't want to screw that up by moving the cab around. So the radiator support is slid over as far as it can go. I didn't elongate the holes or anything, just slid it over with the slop in the holes, tightened it up, and that's where we're at. So to get this fender to do what I want, what I did was I took all the bolts out, all of them, and it's basically just hanging on the inner fender well. And then I took the radiator support bolts right here out completely. I dropped a 1/4 inch bolt in there so there's plenty of room, wiggle room. And I only did that so nothing could, fall away or anything like that. It's not even bolted, it's just dropped in there. And then I took this load bar. It's just, one you get, and it goes in your pickup, to keep things from sliding around. And that's my helper. If somebody was here, they could certainly help me just push back on it. So what's that doing? It's pushing the fender up a little bit and back. And that actually got me what I needed. Now the hole right here is not going to line up very well. So once I get the fender set where I want, I'm going to take a drill bit and I'm just going to run it through there so the bolt will go in. That's it. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. So while the load bar is on here, I went ahead and reinstalled the bolts that go from on the back fender to the cab. So that way that fender couldn't creep forward again once I released the load bar. So I've got all those in there. I've got the welting in back where it belongs, and I've got those tight. So now that fender cannot move forward when I release the load bar. And then all I have to do is close the hood and make sure it looks all good, and then we can start thinking about drilling those 2 holes out, getting that bolted together, and then start getting the rest of the bolts in and see where we're at. So let me put the camera down, we'll close the hood, see how this thing looks, after the load bar is released, and then hopefully we are very close to getting everything back together. Okay guys, let's take a look at it. So we got really nice alignment here. That's looking really good. Now down the seam here, down the gap, it's not perfect, but we still need to attach all those bolts and the tensioning rod, and that should pull this fender up and towards the hood. So that should clean that up because it's not as tight as it should be. This side, I got it nailed down pretty nice. I mean, that is all looking really good down through there. So let me get the rest of these bolts in, and then we're going to take a look at it and see how we did. Okay, we got all the bolts tight. Everything's looking good. I did have to put 2 shims in, so I'll show you right here. And what I did was I put them in between, if I can get in here, I put them in between the radiator support and the inner fender well. And you can see it right there. Okay, you see that little shiny thing right in there? So that's 2 fender shims. And I put that in to push the fender away so we would get the good gap right up here between the hood and the fender. So that was necessary to push that over. It took the brace that's inside, everything, and moved it over, giving me the proper gap. Then you guys recall I said I opened up those holes a little bit. So once I got everything where I wanted it, then I just ran the drill bit through there and opened those holes up a little bit and dropped the bolts in, tightened everything up. So let's close the hood, take a look at it. Okay guys, here we go. We got the hood to grill alignment. It looks perfect right down the center. Got the gap right there, the gap there, slightly more than the passenger side, but it looks really good. Let's check out the lines over here. Now you can see this gap right here. Look how nice that is, huh? And then across the hood, it's looking really good. Nice and even. Look at the elevation. It looks perfect right across there. I'm really liking the way it looks, so I'm really happy. Now I've got easy 10 hours into adjusting. That's just into the adjusting part. So you don't be discouraged, take breaks, whatever you got to do. But 10 hours is 10 hours. It takes what it takes. So we'll get over on this side. See that line? Let me get that tree shadow out of there. And it looks just as good as the other side, nice and flat. And then the line right through here. Now the only thing I'm not particularly happy with is the gap between the hood and the fender. You can see the bumper right there, and the bumper has maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds to go before it touches. And you can get that out. I can loosen these fenders up and raise the back up a little bit, and it'll take most of that out. The problem with that is there's welting on this truck, and that would push the welting into the hood, and I just simply don't want to do that. This isn't a show truck. This is going to be a nice driver, and I think it looks fantastic just the way it is, and it probably looks the best as far as alignment than it ever has its whole life. So you know, there's no reason to go crazy unless you're going show truck, but I'm really happy with what came out. I think it looks fantastic. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on the 1950 Chevy truck, getting the hood installed, aligned, and then getting the fenders aligned to match. I think it came out really nice, really nice. So, you know, the shop manual is great, but if you try to follow it to the letter, you're going to get frustrated and you're not going to get the results you want. So you got to get creative, you got to be patient, and you got to check things out. Why is it not getting where I want it to be? And then you can find a solution to that. You know, like we talked about, maybe the cab's a little askew. Maybe, you know, the holes need to be opened up a little bit. Maybe you need to use a shim like I did, or 2. You know, whatever it takes to get that thing looking really good. In the end, once it's all tightened up and driving down the road, it really doesn't matter. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think of the alignment job I did on this thing. And we'll see you on the next one.